when to push and when to rest. I chose this concept because I've been coaching now for 6.5 years, and with the way the market is right now and just where people are at, it's kind of a weird time for a lot of people. And like being able to really discern when you need to rest and when to push is, I think, an undervalued skill for a lot of people. Because think about that, when it's okay to push, then you can just go hard. And we do well with challenge with ADHD. We do really well. And so knowing when that opportunity is, you can push really, really hard. And then also knowing when to rest is important so you don't get sick and you don't get burned out and you don't get apathetic, and all those things. And so this really matters, because when you can kind of master discerning when you need to rest and when you need to push, it's this incredible skill where you're going to be able to push and not worry that you're going to burn out or something like that, and so it's important. So here's the agenda today. I'm going to talk about why it can be harder for someone with ADHD to be able to answer that, like when to push and when to rest. It is actually a little bit harder for us to discern when that is. And so I'm going to talk about why that is. I'm going to give you the number one question to ask yourself to get clarity. This is the one that I've ended up with after 9,000, I think I'm at 9,455 coaching calls with agents. A lot of them have ADHD. So I'm going to give you the number one question that I ask after all this. And then I'm going to also talk about like some signs that it might be time to rest, and some 3 questions to ask yourself and kind of get in alignment with to push. And then also we're going to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then the window of tolerance. So those are 2. I have a mental health background, so these are 2 different theories, well-receptive theories. Some of you have heard them before because they're pretty big, and I'm going to go over those and how they all tie in. And so the intention by the end of today is for you to have tools and to have a better understanding of where you're at right now. Is it time to push? Is it time to push yourself? Is it time to rest? And pushing could mean, in the moment you push for an hour, or it could be for a week or a month. It could also be, when we talk about rest, it doesn't have to be this huge thing. It could be just you need to add more breaks in, or really, do you need like a week off, and actually that's going to move you forward. And so that is the intention today, is for you to have a lot more clarity by the end of this. Is it time to push yourself? Is it time to rest? Or is it a mix of the two? And how will you know? So first off, why resting? Why that's important? I worked in mental health, and I also have a degree in health and wellness, actually. And I used to work with people in mental health facilities and do workout plans before I went into mental health. And who's here has lifted weights before? Anybody lifted weights or been into fitness or anything? Okay. Or just worked hard, lifted a water glass, right? So when you lift weights, if you don't rest, you don't grow. Right? So what happens when you lift weights? You're actually breaking down the muscle fibers, and then the way they're growing is they're actually being filled in, and that creates growth. When you rest, it fills it in. And so when you don't rest and we just go in real estate, a lot of times your performance is going to suffer. And so it might feel like you're going really hard and you're grinding and you're pushing, when if you stop to rest, you might actually be more efficient and have more sales. So know that rest is really important in all of this. And before I get to the list of why it can be harder to rest with ADHD, the other thing I want to throw out there is just our culture is not as conducive to rest. There's some really great things about our culture, and there's some other really great things about Europe. If you've been to Europe, where they tend to treasure rest a little bit more. They have long dinners. They have 3-day weekends. And so there's really good things to how our culture is in some ways, like work hard, capitalism, things like that. And then there's some things where rest isn't as much of a priority. And so that's why it's important to do that. And then also we're in the entrepreneurial field, and there is what I call and what other people call toxic achievement culture within within real estate, where it's like hashtag no bad days, hashtag grind every day, that kind of stuff. And that's not sustainable or healthy. And so you can totally push, you can totally grind, and you got to have some balance and some humanness in there. So why can it be harder for someone with ADHD to know when it's time to rest and when it's time to push? So first off, I want you to think about your development. When your brain's developing in your environment, in your home, in school. Because with ADHD, we get 20,000 negative messages about our behavior by the age of 8, right? A lot of times we're compensating or thinking, I've got to try really hard, I'm going to get in trouble. And that's at an early age as you're as your brain is developing. And so for a lot of us, we're not lazy, and we might have been told we're lazy over and over again, but it's actually executive dysfunction, right? Our brain's not prioritizing. It's getting overwhelmed. It's getting paralyzed. It's can't focus. And so for a lot of us, there's this internalized feeling of like, oh my gosh, I'm lazy. And it's like, I don't want to be lazy. I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to be these things. So we can overcompensate and feel like resting is bad. Like we're going to get in trouble when you rest. The other thing too is if you have a parent who has ADHD, which you have a 50% chance that, your parent is, you might even get more of that because there's a way to compensate or be a perfectionist or kind of, mask your symptoms to just push. And so you might have been taught that by your parent, that it's like, for some people, your worth is equal to your work, and not working equals not worthy, right? You've got to be achieving. You've got to be pushing yourself. You've got to be working, or you're lazy, and that's like a defense mechanism or coping mechanism that they learn to not get in trouble, and they just haven't unpacked that yet. So think about your environment. So if you were growing up and your worth was based on achievement, then that's an indicator that you may not be resting enough, or you might have a lot of stuff attached to that. If you were in an environment where you didn't have accountability, you didn't have boundaries, then you might push yourself overall a little bit more to kind of give yourself that structure and that accountability that you didn't get as a kid. And so I love the saying is like, be who you need as a kid. You can still parent yourself now, no matter how old you are. You can still give yourself what you didn't get. And if you need there to be, a part of you that's a parent that says, hey, it's okay to rest, be that. If there's a party that says, hey, I really believe in you, and come on, we got to get up and do this, be that for yourself. You can be either one depending on what you need. So number one, why it can be harder for someone with ADHD to know whether they should rest or push is because a lot of times a coping skill is for us to be highly productive and to compensate and be a perfectionist. Another thing, this is really interesting, with neurodivergence, we have a weaker interoceptive sense. So interoceptive sense is our brain's ability to properly interpret signals from the body's internal organs, saying whether we're hungry, thirsty, we're in pain, we're tired, using the restroom. There's a weakened sense of that. So we don't always realize when we've gone too far, when we've pushed ourselves too far. And we like a challenge, right? So we can get hyper focused on a challenge and go like too much, too fast, right? Like an example I thought about, I'm just going to share it. So as a kid, I was like 10, definitely potty trained, right? And my interoception was so weak that I remember one time super embarrassed with all my friends. I literally just didn't realize I had to go to the restroom, 10 years old. And I literally am just like peeing while I'm standing in the hallway because it didn't even register that I had to use the restroom because I was like so focused on having fun and stuff like that. So it's even more so in kids. If you have kids who have ADHD that don't realize they're hungry, thirsty, pain, it's normal. Like I said, we like a challenge. We can thrive in it. And sometimes we can also kind of secondary take on too much. And then we don't want to let people down. So we take on a huge challenge. And now we don't want to let people down. And we hyper focus on it. And we get in the middle of it. Oh my gosh. Also, fatigue is really normal with ADHD. It's normal to have a lot of fatigue, to feel overwhelmed. And so, there are times when it might be time to rest. And it's like, I've already struggled. I've already kind of half been resting. I don't deserve time to rest. Another thing, we can forget things. So when there's dead space, when there's actually time to rest, it's like, oh my gosh, let me catch up. I have this huge to-do list that's stressing me out. Let me finish this up. The masking. Masking is covering up your symptoms, being super early for things, being, like I said, a perfectionist. That's something that's definitely part of masking, trying to do a really good job. And then if there haven't been deadlines. So remember with ADHD, we have what's called time blindness. So we have trouble gauging how long it's been, what time it is, all of those things. And a lot of times we can perceive time as now or not now, kind of in two different ways, now or not now. And so when there's time to rest, it might be that there's a bunch of urgent stuff because we didn't really plan ahead. We didn't realize. So you might have a week off and then think, oh my gosh, I forgot. We're supposed to renovate the house, or we're supposed to meet with this, or oh, we have this, or, so that, and then we can overthink a lot and not trust ourselves. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that can happen. And then sometimes when we do rest, if there's not deadlines and there's not urgency, what can happen is there's not enough structure and we kind of flounder. So you have a week off and now there's no structure and you struggle, and it actually ends up being stressful because you're in your head the whole time instead of having, a way, instead of just being able to sit and rest. So there are ways to rest. We'll do a call on that. There are ways to really rest with ADHD, and it doesn't have to be just sitting there in silence. All kinds of things. You're resting doesn't have to look like everybody else's. It's whatever feels good to your brain. So those are just some reasons why it can be a little bit harder for us to like know if we should rest and when we should push, that as well. So I want to talk about also what this is another piece of why this can be harder. And this is the window of tolerance. So I want to talk to you about this, and I'm going to do a visual on this. This is the other thing that can make it harder to know whether we should rest or not. So window of tolerance, some of you have probably heard me talk about this. So the green spot, this window of tolerance, this is where ideally we want to be. This is where we're regulated, right? We're not overwhelmed or overstimulated. We're also not understimulated because we can get bored or we don't have any energy. We want to be in this green spot. And so it could be sometimes that you think you're tired and you need to rest, but you're really in what we call hypoarousal. So hypoarousal is the opposite of hyperarousal. Hyperarousal is like overwhelmed, anxious. You can't calm down. You're buzzing. Go 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 go. You just can't stop it, and it doesn't feel good. Hypoarousal is actually the opposite of that. You can't get off the couch. You can't move. You're just unmotivated, and there's maybe not a reason for you to be in that spot. And of course, there are a lot of other factors that can play in. If you've got anxiety, if you've got trauma, if you've got hormone stuff going on, if you have depression. So there can be other reasons. And, this state here, what's interesting is if you're actually in this state and then you can kind of rev up your nervous system and you get into here, then you know that you might have been in hypoarousal. So if you can get up and go for a walk and you actually feel a lot better, you're not tired anymore, you might have been in this hypoarousal. Where it's like you're depressed, you're lethargic, or you could literally be burned out and you are really tired and you need a break. It just depends. So this is why it can be harder, because you might be in hypoarousal and think maybe I do need a break, but I haven't done anything. And, like what, or, hyperarousal. What's interesting is some of us do better, a lot of us, when there's a lot of stuff going on. It's like this balance. When there's a big challenge, then we're good. We feel good. If there's not, and there's a bunch of downtime and it's kind of dead time, sometimes it can give us anxiety, or not feel great. So this window of tolerance, and the thing with ADHD is because we can fluctuate between the two multiple times throughout the day. So you might be in hyperarousal where you're overwhelmed. You can't even think clearly. It's too much. And then you're in hypoarousal where you can't even move. You can't do anything. You can't even feed yourself. And you can fluctuate between this throughout the day. And so it can feel harder to know, well, should I rest? Should I push myself? That kind of stuff. So that being said, let's go into some of the reasons as to like, hey, it really is time to rest. Like it's time. And resting could be a day. It could be a week. It could be, going on a couple weeks. It could be 15 minutes. So that depends on what your brain is needing. So these are signs that it really is time to rest. So chronic stress. If you're just chronically stressed and then coupled with that, your body might be breaking down. You might have random like cramps in your legs or your arms or just any of your muscles, just kind of random. Your mood has gotten really like down. You might be really irritable, short fuse, or you might be just apathetic. Like you literally just don't care. Or it might be that I remember years ago when I was in burnout, just looking at the MLS, like I wanted to throw up. I needed a break so bad. So your mood is just having, and there's not other ways to really describe it. If your sleep is drastically off, if you just have a bunch of insomnia that's not normal for you, like if you know your baseline and you're off your baseline, that can be one. If you're seeing a lot more impulse purchases or eating or risky behaviors, what can happen is when we don't rest, right, we have lower dopamine levels. It's like the brain is grasping at dopamine just to get you going. So it might be grasping at, ordering something or doing something or getting food because you literally, it's like dopamine's kind of the fuel and your car won't move. So you're grasping at things to give you fuel that might not be overall in alignment with what you want, but it's something to just get through the day. So your eating might be totally off. You might be spending way more money and you just feel like you don't have any self-control. Dreading your job, like always tired no matter how much you rest. You're just always tired no matter how much you rest, and it's not tied to something physical or medical or a diagnosis. So yeah, and then your like lack of focus, you're withdrawn, you're isolating. So look for things that are just off of your baseline. And then also, if your symptoms have suddenly gotten worse, like pretty drastically, unless there's something medical going on, ADHD is not a progressive thing. It doesn't get way worse. That's not really a thing. So usually it could be a nutritional deficiency or hormones or just chronic stress where you need a break. So if you feel like it's just gotten totally worse, rule out any medical things with that, and then or environmental. If you're in a relationship that you're not happy or you're in high stress, if there's nothing else you can point to outside of you, your ADHD very likely didn't get worse. You might need a break. You might need a rest because you might be just on fumes right now. And so now I want to do Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and this is another way that you can determine which one you're in and whether you need to rest or push. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is a very well respected theory, and so we have down here, this is the triangle, and you can Google this, it's all over. So we have our physiological needs at the bottom. This is food, water, warmth, rest, shelter. Then we have safety needs, security, safety, then belonging and love needs, so intimate relationships, friends. Then we have our esteem needs, like prestige, feeling accomplished. And then we have self-actualization, so achieving your full potential, being creative, having fun, all those, goofy, just really getting where you feel like you're really hitting your potential. So if you don't have these bottom ones, it's going to be harder to do this. And so if you don't feel secure or safe, and that's why I push so much to do trauma work if you have that, because if you're constantly not feeling safe, you still can hit this. It's just going to be harder. And we want to address things and like make things easiest, because if you're pushing yourself really hard and you have all these, and you're walking in quicksand or something, it's going to take more. Whereas if we can remove the quicksand, you're going to get there faster and you won't have to grind or push as hard. And so, make sure, and we can forget to eat and drink water and all that stuff. So that's why you want to like really give yourself good self-care and have like water if you can in your vehicle. If you have like granola bar or something like that, we want to rest. Security and safety, want to feel safe, address the trauma stuff. If you're in a relationship or a neighborhood or something that doesn't feel safe, that's important. Like emotionally safe, if you don't feel emotionally safe in any of your environments, in any of the circles, work, home, and then that having those friends, those relationships, this stuff is going to be a lot easier. So right now, there are a lot of people that are feeling anxious. It's a weird time in the market. It's a weird time in the world. It's a weird time politically. There's so much divisive. There's all kinds of stuff going on. And so it also might be that some of this stuff feels harder right now because some of this stuff might feel less, secure. And if the market's weird and your numbers are down or something like that, and you're a little bit nervous about this, so I want to throw that out there. It doesn't mean you're getting lazy. It doesn't mean you're not meant for this anymore. You're falling behind. It could be that you're human and you have emotions and you're not a robot that just produces things. And what can you do to soothe these? What can you do to self-soothe when you don't feel safe? What can you do to make sure your physiological needs are met? What can you do to have more friendships or have more things in your relationship? Because I'm telling you, some people think you just have to grind, to like have more sales. And sometimes it's actually taking a step back and making sure you check the boxes on these. And then this comes way more naturally. So I want to throw this out there if this is helpful or validating for anybody. And then also sometimes we can suffer with self-care. We can kind of neglect ourselves, especially because we're not, always knowing when we're hungry or thirsty or stressed out or too much. And so it's really being about like checking in with yourself, giving yourself a lot of like self-care, and then making this easier for you. So that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Always a good one that I rely on a lot. Okay. So let me stop share then. And then what I want to talk about now is like the number. And so I'm going to talk about the number one question to ask yourself in this situation, like should you push or not? And then I'm going to give you 3 questions when you think it may be time to push. Let's say you get to that. Then there's 3 questions you want to ask yourself if you're feeling resistance around that. So this is the number one question. Like I said, I mean, this is 6.5 years of coaching. I've asked this question in many different ways. And what I found is the best thing to do, especially with us with ADHD, is to say, not what do you think? It's, picture someone you care about. So I want you to do that right now. So this could be, just think of somebody that you love, that you care about. This could be a kid, a parent, a friend of yours, a spouse, somebody you're mentoring, it could be just an agent in the office that you're caring about. So think about that right now and just have that person in your head. And then think if they were in the exact situation that you're in and they were asking those questions, what advice would you give them? That is, like, as a coach, that is the most powerful thing that I found that helps people. So, what advice would you give someone you love? And really think of someone specific who was in your situation. Would you tell them to push? Would you tell them to rest? What would you tell them? And that, because there is an innate part of you that knows. And when you do it that way, it can kind of pull off all the conditioning, or just, if you think about yourself and maybe you haven't given yourself as much grace or compassion. A lot of times with ADHD, we can give a lot to other people, and we're working a little bit more on giving that to ourselves. And so, yeah, what would you give? What advice would you give to somebody in your situation? So that is honestly like the number one, and that could be in the moment. It could, for just now. It could be for your career. All of those things. So, okay. So then let's say you've ruled out, like, you're not experiencing the chronic stress. Your body is not breaking down. You're not irritable. But you just don't. It's like there's a resistance there. You can't point anything. You're like, listen, like, I'm not tired. Why can't I push myself? So here's some questions to ask. So the number one, I'm going to give you 3 different ones to kind of explore. Number one is it in alignment with your values? Is it in alignment with what you actually want? So some examples of that would be someone that's like, oh man, I'm not, pushing, I'm not doing more sales because I'm home with my newborn and I should do all this stuff. And it's like, okay, if you did that stuff, what would that take away from home? Well, I'd have to get a babysitter. I wouldn't be able to be with my newborn. Okay. So, long story short, their values are actually like being there for their kids' development. And are you going to lose groceries and, your mortgage in your house if you don't pay? Well, no, my spouse pays it. Okay. So it might be that it's, the thing you're pushing yourself to do might not be in alignment. Or, maybe it's a script that you're not excited about, or maybe it's a niche that you're not excited about calling, or maybe you're doing it because you think you're supposed to do it. So you want to make sure that it's in alignment with what you actually like care about. Or do you like the office that you're at? Do you like the people that are around you? And if there's a bunch of resistance and it's not in alignment, what can you do to switch it? How can you get it in alignment? So that can kind of help kind of push. And then the other one, this is interesting. This is like, is it, and they have, is it habitual? So here's what I mean by that is, are you the kind of person that when things get really tough and you're faced with uncertainty or it doesn't go as planned, are you the type of person that pushes harder, puts more effort in, tries to force things through by a sheer force of will? Or do you freeze? Do you shut down? Do you look for other things to get busy with? Do you, drop the ball? Do you just kind of get paralyzed? So whatever your answer is, play with doing the opposite. So if you're the person that just pushes through with uncertainty, you sheer force of will, and you're kind of stuck in a moment, try pulling back and being gentle with yourself. Like, try slowing down a little bit, and doing a little bit less. If you're the kind of person that freezes or looks for other things to do, which I think probably I'm in that camp as well, that second one, and more likely you might be in that, and we've got people in both. If you're the kind of person that freezes or shuts down or tries to look for other things or whatever, that's when we want to do the opposite of that and just take action on something small. So do one little thing around it, take one little action, see how you feel. So you want to kind of do the opposite of your normal response if you can, because we have people that just push and grind through and they get themselves sick. They don't slow down. They don't stop. And then we have other people that get really frozen and paralyzed and don't take action and don't have a lot going on. And the best thing that they could do would actually be to speed up and, take a little action. So then the third one, so let's say it is an alignment. You have like done the opposite of kind of what your MO is, but you're still stuck. The other question is like, is it the right time to do this? So what I mean by that is like, are you trying to take on too much, but you don't have the energy for it? It's too much. You have to simplify it. Or, do you need to zero in and focus on one thing and not a bunch of things? And so again, it's kind of out of alignment that you need. Or maybe you're not quite ready to do this next thing. Maybe you want to get mastery on something else first and then go to the next thing. Maybe you don't have the support or the external resources you need. Or maybe it's just not the right time. So the thing I think with ADHD is that we can kind of go into all or nothing thinking or black and white thinking. And that's pretty easy to do. And so there's a lot of nuances in there. And so don't go straight to, oh my gosh, why am I not doing this? Like I'm a failure or whatever. It's like, maybe it's not the right time. Maybe it's not the right choice. Maybe it's not in your joy zone. Maybe it's not in alignment with who you are. And, if it's time to push and none of these things are actually in the way, you might just need accountability, or you might need a body double, or somebody sits with you while you do it, or something to kind of turn the pain up. So if and then this other one is really good too. This is huge. Who would you be without that thought? Who would you be without that thought? So let's say you have a thought that's like, I need to rest right now. Like, I need to rest. I'm burned out. I can't do this. It's too much. What would happen if you didn't have that thought and you still did it? If the answer is you would get sick, you need to rest. If the answer is, well, things would get worse and I would get paralyzed, you need to rest. If it's, well, if I didn't have these thoughts that I'm tired and I need to rest and I just did it, then I'd actually be in a better spot and I'd be happy. So it's a little bit more of discernment versus this all or nothing, where you really want to be curious and ask yourself different questions to really understand when it's time to rest and when it's time to push. Because when you push at the right time, it's great. When you push at the wrong time, it can make you sick. When you rest at the right time, oh, it's so rejuvenating. You come back, you do amazing things. When you rest at the wrong time, then you may not have as much income and you're going to get more stressed and you're going to kind of dig yourself in a hole. And yeah, thank you again for everything and for everybody who shared. Have a wonderful day and care about you a lot. All right. Have a good one.